Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the webinar series here at Ball State's Center for Professional Selling. My name is Deva Rangarajan. I'm the director of the center and the host of this talk series. Today, we have the privilege of having Mr. Richard Brock, the CEO of salesrelevance.com, which is part of Sales Talk Technologies, which actually is a really cool company that is trying to take a look at how AI is shaping sales and more specifically the sales conversations that our salespeople need to be having with their customers. So I just thought it would be fantastic to have Richard on the show. Richard, thank you so much for taking time to talk to me and the audience.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Absolutely. Richard, tell me a little bit more. Salesrelevance.com, what is it all about?
Well, we have been in the sales business for quite a while. I've been in the CRM space since it was started. And things change, as we all know. And everybody goes back to the refrain, like the internet's changed everything. It has. And even all these new, cell phones or whatever, the attention span of people is 2 minutes, 2 seconds. It's ridiculously short now. But the big fundamental problem was prior to people being able to research their own information on companies, they had to talk to a sales rep, because the sales rep was a broker of information. And if you told the sales rep, your name was Mickey Mouse, and you live at Disneyland, he'd say, sure, I'll mail it to you, Mickey. And so you had to tell him your true name and your true address, or you didn't get the brochure. See, the sales rep, you had to talk to a sales rep to learn something. You had to talk to multiple reps. You had to go to a trade show and go to different vendors to see what was in the market. That's not true anymore. As we all know, 70% of the buying is done before they talk to a sales rep. And you get into the age differences as well. You get into the younger buyers, they don't even want to talk to people on the phone. It's kind of shocking that only 48% of the people answer their phone calls. We're shocked to find a high percentage of businesses that do not even put a phone number on their website. That's pretty shocking because they want to basically manage the interaction with their prospects. Like, what? It's a little strange. That's not exactly selling. Maybe that's, if your product is that hot, you can get away with it. So in today's world, and it's also true of the younger generation, they don't want to have a phone call. They want to text with people. So we have a generation that's not used to communicating verbally. Not that they're not comfortable with it, but they're used to very short spurts of things that are animated and cool on their little cell phones. So if they can't see it in their thumbs, that presents a heck of a problem for a sales rep. That's why we focus on sales relevance, because many studies have shown you've got like 27 seconds, if they do answer, to basically say something that's relevant to them. Because what's important to them is what they'll listen to. It's not what they need to hear about or how you can solve their problems. It's what they perceive that they need. So now the real complexity is that a lot of times we have to sell to different roles. An example that I've done some videos on, we're using our own case where we're selling to 5 different roles. Okay. We got 22 product features to 5 different roles. They're not all equally relevant to any role. Even within the roles, you would think too, like a sales manager and a sales rep would have a similar interest. Similar, close doesn't count. It counts in horseshoes. It does not count in sales. And you got that 27-second rule, if you will. So to make it, so here's the problem. If you're not relevant, they hang up. You hear click, okay? And so you have to be particularly relevant. And so you have to have a massive, I think if there's 330 ways to present a product. If you have 22 features times 5 personas, times 3 different personality types even, that's just 330 ways to say hello. So here enters artificial intelligence. So if you've got a very short attention span, and where AI comes into play is where sales reps are only human. Yeah, and they always will be only human. The human on the other end of the line is not interested in anything that's not relevant to them immediately. So they're overwhelmed. The sales rep, if they prepare for a call, and absolutely they should prepare for certain critical calls. But if only half the people are going to answer, can you spend 30 minutes preparing for that call? Don't think so.
Yeah.
So basically, if you're making 40, 50 calls a day, that's 200 a week or so. Can you really remember what you said to this guy last week? And isn't it critical that you pick up where you left off? And isn't it critical that if you have a field rep who's picked up a lead from a business development rep, that he picks up where the conversation left off? So these things demand that we do something differently. We must do something differently. The amount of data that a rep is called upon to remember and say is overwhelming.
Yeah.
Let's just say the 330 ways to say hello, for example. With the rep, the studies show that the drop off after training is dramatic of what you remember. So good reps are able to basically intuitively, naturally, or through hard work, discern a few opening statements that work for them.
Mm.
That's great. So they sell those people where those statements work and they lose the rest. Similarly, if 70% of the buyers have already selected the vendors, you're down the short list already. Do you have enough deals in your pipeline or leads coming to you that you can throw away the people? Can you waste those good leads that would talk to you by not being relevant? So we think that artificial intelligence is the only way for a sales rep to effectively open a conversation and maintain relevancy during the conversation, because relevancy establishes credibility. Okay. If you're not credible, if you're relevant, you become competent. You appear to be competent, and you're also confident. So if you're a buyer and you have a rep, I'm laughing because I'm telling a story. This is a personal story, but you're a young man, you have to ask the first girl on a date. So I asked my older brother, okay, it was a school dance or something. And he says, oh, you just call me, say so-and-so. Well, that was in the morning. And so as the day got longer, the phone got bigger and bigger and bigger. So the phone was as big as a TV set. So when I called her that afternoon, late the afternoon, I said, Margie, you wouldn't want to go to that dance with me, would you? That's a true story, okay? And she actually went on to marry a very famous singer. She was very pretty. And worse, she went to college with me. And so maybe she would have wanted to go out with me, but to avoid rejection, which is what too many reps do, or a young man to avoid rejection, you wouldn't want to go to that dance with me, would you? That's a truth to quote. And that's the problem we're facing. So we think that it's sales reps like this, because no one wants to appear to be incompetent or lacking confidence. And reps, that's the reps perspective, and the buyers love it. So it's the way to basically take the overwhelming amount of information that's available to a prospect and filter it down to what a seller should be saying to the buyer if you're going to get their interest.
Indeed. I think it's very, very interesting, because I think one of the things that people are now beginning to also realize is the fact that I love the fact that you said that if you take your own example, you said you have 22 different features, but then the idea is that those features have to reach across to 5 different roles, and each of these roles is going to take a look at these features differently. So a sales rep needs to gauge that in terms of what a feature is going to be relevant. Again, we're not even talking about benefits, we're only talking about features. So what feature is going to be relevant to what specific role in order of importance, because that's also one thing that I have personally learned from looking at your white paper, it's just the fact that it's not just 5 different roles, but each 5 different roles have different priorities in how they view these as well. And now you combine that, and 3 is just the minimum number of personalities. So in case people are wondering or watching this saying, where did Richard come up with 330? That's 22 multiplied by 5. That's 110. To 3 different the personality types of the people you talk to. And if you believe in 6 different personality types, then it's actually 110 multiplied by 6. So it actually could be even 660. So essentially, that is the kind of things that we talk about. Now, this is very similar to what we see from other typical sales enablement vendors that actually say that the number of conversations that a salesperson needs to have, and the differences in these sales conversations leads to a lot of different permutations and combinations. And I really like this idea of looking into AI, but now I'm more interested in trying to understand, how does sales relevance make this accessible to your customers? What do I mean by that is the following. So we hear a lot about how SDRs and people are kind of anxious about AI and how it might be out there taking away jobs and sales. And I'm reminded of the very famous Forrester research that said in 2015 that 1 million sales jobs would be made redundant in the B2B space in the US. So my question to you is that with all this happening, and with a lot of people now saying, hey, are we even going to be relevant? How is AI going to shake this up? And so essentially you have people getting worried about it. So tell me about the psychological aspects of how some of your customers and other people that you've had a chance to talk to react to AI. And that's my first question. So essentially, if you could tell me how SDRs or even field sales reps, I'm assuming that your uh, platform or tool can also be made use of by field sales reps as well, right?
Exactly.
So tell me about the psychological aspects of how your typical audience, your customers or your stakeholders, that is the salespeople or BDS, how do they respond to AI taking over aspects of their job?
Yeah, and I would say that the 1,500 jobs or what that you were talking about
It's
is
actually supposed to
lost.
be 1 million. That's what Forrester said.
Right. That those jobs are lost because those are the information brokers. That's over. Okay, that's over, and it will always be over.
Mm.
And it gets worse though, because when you mentioned about AI, part of the thing is you have to have people believing what you're going to say. So the first step is if you're going to be confident to a buyer and talking about what he wants, you have to believe what you're saying is relevant to the buyer. So, over time, a sales rep may learn, but that's an expensive learning
Yeah,
process.
indeed.
And maybe they don't have the intuition or the magic, insights to figure it out. So what we do is because we capture what happens during a call, we're unique that we capture the actual time that each subject is being discussed. And so if you capture the time that just by clicking the click note when you're talking, it basically makes a CRM more accurate.
Yeah.
The most important thing is the time element. So that you know that if you talked about the budget for 2 minutes, or you talked about the competitors for 3 minutes, or you talked about the contract for a minute and a half, or whatever. So you're tracking these things, and the rep is not entering anything. They're just clicking it to make a note in what we call the story so far for that particular lead they're talking to. Now here's where the confidence comes in. As we summarize all that on leads that close. So you basically, as a sales manager, you see these are the conversations that matter. That you're not going to close a deal if you didn't talk about the contract for a minute and a half, or if you didn't talk about the implementation options or whatever it might be. So the fact is we time it, and then we use reports of deals that close.
Mhm.
See, or we're forecasted close, at least they got that far, because this is what a buyer, and we correlate that to the roles
Mhm.
and the personality types. So when we go to a sales rep, we don't say that a buyer, let's say the VP of sales, who's our primary buyer, in a manufacturing company, would be interested in this because we said so. Now, we say, here's what we're telling you. That VP of sales in manufacturing companies who are market leaders are interested in these facts. Market challengers interested in these facts. Well, how do you know that? Because we've analyzed 400 calls to these type people,
Mhm.
and they talk on average 2 minutes about this subject. That means you're interested. So we profile from the top to the bottom what these actual people are interested in. So it's not intuition. There's no note taking during the call. There's no analyzing and recording phone calls to determine what was talked about, because what the AI engines that look at recorded calls, they pick out a keyword. We talked about the budget. Yeah, we talked about the contract. That's interesting, but there's too many false starts in there
Yeah.
because the word's in there. But if you don't have the relevancy of time that we talked about for 2 minutes or 4 minutes, and if you're only looking at deals that close, then it's valid. So the
Mhm.
first thing is to gain the confidence of the sales rep that this is a good use of their time, because sales reps
Mhm.
are money motivated. They're paid a compensation, and so they're not going to waste their time doing something that doesn't help them sell more. So you gain their confidence by showing them that, let me share with you what is working.
Mhm.
And that other sales rep that has a new car in the parking lot, here's the secret. Here's what they're doing. And so when you we talk to sales consultants, and the example we use is when they do a training class. And we say, after the training class, everybody knows that when the reps get up to leave the room, they're forgetting. And they continue to forget. And so this is sales training. To be effective has to be transformational of behaviors.
Mhm.
And the only way you change behaviors is to basically repetition and make it relevant, memorable. So what we do to the sales managers, their example we tell them is you call the client and you say, Mr. Big Bucks, who wrote the check for the training, and you say, Mr. Big Bucks, thank you for letting me talk to Tom, Dick, and Harry in the training last month. How do you think it went? Well, feedback was good. Not sure if they're applying it yet. And then you say, well, Mr. Big Bucks, let me share with you an observation. I'll bet you that Tom's sales are up a little bit, okay? Dick's sales are going through the roof. Harry's sales are flat, aren't they? And he looks at you like, what? Are you reading my books? How did you know that?
Yeah.
I don't know that. I'm just looking at how our system captures the behaviors.
Yeah.
Tom is doing a little bit of what we taught. Dick is doing everything we taught. Harry ain't doing nothing differently, and it's getting the same results. And so you say, would you mind if I have a phone call with Tom, Dick, and Harry and share Dick's behavior, okay, with Tom and Harry? And they'll say, amen. Because Tom and Harry want to be as successful. They want the new car in the parking lot too. But once again, if you're a sales rep, has to be somewhat, maybe a lot, self-confident, which means they have to believe what you're telling them or they won't change behaviors. That's the nature of it. You can't get in the phone and face rejection all day long without, having the confidence that what you're doing is of value to people and that you're smart and you know what you're doing. So you can't destroy their confidence, but it's very easy to get Tom and Harry to look at what Dick is doing because Dick's got the new car. And Dick didn't take any notes. He didn't go out of the way. And he's happy to be honored. And so then the sales, Mr. Big Box says, oh, would you please come in and, yes, counsel them and let's do more training. And how can your system keep us more? So the secret sauce, I think, is that everything people are going to amplify. The points that we recommend to them are not based upon some intuition we have. It's not based upon it's based upon the deals that close, what really worked. And that's why it's a secret sauce, is it has the confidence of the sales reps to use it, the sales managers to recommend it. But the real person that matters is the buyer. And on the phone, they see someone who may not be experienced. They can tell by their voice, okay, that they're young. However, they are relevant. And relevance means you're talking about what I want to talk about, the sequence I want to talk about it. And that's the secret of our solution.
Indeed. Now, this is very, very relevant, what you're talking about. It's interesting. Sales relevance, relevant, yes. And for me, what still is one of the things that you have is, let's take a look at Harry. It was Harry who's the one who was not performing well at all in the example that you just gave. And to what extent do you think that Harry is not doing it because Harry is concerned? Because as you said, if the way the technology works is that it's recording everything that you say, so which means that Harry might feel that he is under the microscope, that things are being recorded, things are going beyond his control, it's a he or she, whatever it is, and consequently they have this feeling. So they're all initially even have these preconceived notions about AI, and then on top of it they feel that it's Big Brother watching over them, and this time it's just not Big Brother watching over them, analyzing every move that they make. And is that something that you are finding? So for Tom, who might just pick up his performance, it sort of makes sense because you're saying, why is Dick successful? So Tom is going to look at getting that feedback and look at it positively. But there's also this other aspect which is saying that, hey, I need to be concerned about this, or psychologically I may be afraid of what's happening out here. So my question to you is that, how, or do you feel that happening amongst your customer base, or from your experience of talking to other suppliers like you that are dealing with AI?
That's a totally valid concern.
Yeah.
Now, AI isn't the culprit here. The call recording is what scares people.
Yeah, yeah.
And our system doesn't record the calls. Now, we partner with people who record the calls. And if they're recording the calls, we create a call map.
Okay.
Which means you look at the story so far and you can see where in the recorded call we discuss the budget, or where we discuss the implementation plan of competitors. So, and the biggest problem is all the call recording companies. I was looking at one of the white papers the other day, and they were admonishing their users that only 8% of you guys are using our software to coach the reps after the initial call. And I'm thinking, yeah, because it's not a good use of their time, because the CEO is going to fire them if they don't make quota. And listening to calls is not going to make quota. Now, they listen to some, but what we do is we get a call map, and we say, of the recorded phone calls, here's the ones you might want to listen to. So I think that when you record calls, you do spook behavior. But you look at the sales rep, they know they have to keep records of what happened during the call. Our VP of sales is Harry. His name is Harry Hardman. He's quite good. But at any rate, what he talks about, as being a sales manager for many years, he called it the Sunday night funnies. And he found a high correlation between when he had a sales meeting on Mondays, which is traditional, right? That the CRMs always had all these activities that were entered on Sunday night at 8 o'clock. Now, were they accurate? Of course they weren't accurate. They were what the rep remembered and what the rep wanted to share to impress others or hide his mistakes or whatever the case may be. So here's the rep annoyed that he's spending Sunday night updating this stupid CRM system, right? You know, and they're not stupid. They're important, but they're systems of record. They record what happened. They don't make things happen. Now, our software says, hey, rep, the boss is going to force you to keep some notes and put something in CRM. I agree. And rep, you know you should have some notes just so you remember what you said last time and you don't insult the prospect like, tell me again, David, what did we discuss last time? He says, how about this? Never call me again. Put it in do not call list, right? So that didn't go over well when you ask the customer to remind you what you said last time. And you certainly can't prepare that way. So the reason why a rep will use our system is not so that it records their time, what they spend on things, not initially. What they're doing it because it saves them time, because just by clicking on, we're talking about the budget, it shows how much time we talked about the budget, that we talked about the contract, that we talked about the implementation. So now, but more importantly, so the CRM gets updated automatically. So when he hangs up, even when he's on the call, he can click a note, it says send a proposal, send this follow-up letter, do this, schedule that. Just clicking a note automatically does that, sends the email to the prospect, and updates the CRM. So he's saving time. But during the call, okay, let's say he deals with, he's got 10 competitors. I'm going to say in any sale, any company has 10 competitors. You run into 5 of them all the time. 5 you rarely do. So can you throw away the deals where you compete with the other 5 when you should be able to romp and stomp on one? It's a horrible solution and you should beat them, but you can't remember because you don't run into them. So what our talking point does when you have the competitive matrix, it shows you all the competitors. And so if the prospect says, well, I'm looking at XYZ, I can't remember anything about XYZ. So he clicks on the talking point, how we are better than XYZ. He says, I'm glad you asked about XYZ. We're better than XYZ. People who use our products say that we do this better than they do, that they enjoy using it. We come up faster, it's easy to use. So he comes across and he goes, save me that one, right? So it's a knowledge repository, or the reps like to use it because let's say that, they've got the joke I use is, let's say you were flying an airplane and you want to know something like, what's the mean time between failure of this engine? That's an important fact, okay? But as a sales rep, you didn't think about engine failures. So the prospect who's interested in buying an airplane says, what's the mean time between failures in the engine? What? Well, we have our knowledge repository is Google-like searchable. So you put, failure times in there and up pumps. Glad you asked, the mean time between failure is 42,000 hours, something like that. Are you going to fly 42,000 hours? And when you do, we can coach you to wherever. And so having a knowledge repository increases the confidence, especially of the newer reps. And remember, people, this is a real fundamental secret here. Secret may not, but it's fun. I think it's a key observation, is people call people who could buy. Now you pay us a beginning sales rep to qualify your leads because he's maybe a starting rep, business development rep. He's anxious to learn, but he doesn't have the experience. He or she doesn't have the experience. So when they got a very senior buyer, on the other hand, you're calling the buyer because they have the money to buy. So the buyer, he or she says, fine, I know you're going to be a nice sales rep one time, but what's in it for me? Like, you don't know what you're talking about, right? Because you don't appear to be confident. So when you get this AI so that they have the personality to deal with a senior VP of sales in this particular role, then they come across as confident. And that's what matters, is the talking points tell you what to say. That's why we call it what to say in what sequence to this buyer. So we're improving the relevance of the perceived competence of the sales rep. That's why they're successful, because you have such an imbalance. You're always going to have beginning reps calling on people who are more experienced. That may be a fair generalization for sure, because you don't want to call on someone else at the other company who's a beginner. You're wasting your time. They don't have the ability to buy. So between the experience of the buyer, which is big, 10, 15 years in the industry, okay, and the experience of the newer sales rep, you got to start somewhere. And in a company, you can't get, let's say, senior experienced people always to make those outbound calls. So to equate this imbalance, you have to give the beginning rep competence, and it must come across as competent, because you can't get generalizations don't work. And so that's what we do is we level the playing field. So when you say that if you're a beginning rep, if you will use our system to just click on it as a way to update the CRM system to save you time, and it's a confidence builder, and it's an emergency bailout when they ask you that tough question, the mean time between failures, absolutely, I'll use it because I just hang up the call. And then, of course, you have like the marketing people or the CEO who looks at the CRM and says, wow, Mr. Sales Manager, what did you do to the reps to get them to start using the CRM?
Yeah.
Well, he didn't do anything to do it. It just became obvious to the reps that it was to their advantage. So it's a win-win-win.
Indeed. Now, I have a couple of questions linked to this, because I think what you're saying is that, and that's what we've found out, not just from here, but when we look at all the things in the past, when we have to make people change the way they behave, it's all about telling them what is in it for them and how are they going to benefit from it. And that's something, essentially what you're saying is that you're going to save time as a sales rep. You're not going to forget things. And also on top of it is that we're going to help you come up with the right kind of conversation starters that's going to give the perception to the buyer that you come off as being confident. So which means that they feel that they are buying from possibly a trusted advisor. So I like that aspect of that.
Yeah.
Now, when you mention that, that's pretty interesting, because you say that there is the fact that there is an AI, there is sales relevance, there are the playbooks, and you're measuring what are they saying and everything else. But in between, there is also a recording part and everything else, right? So my question to you is this. When a sales rep is talking, do you think technology is out there? Does sales relevance do this, where I am having this conversation with you, you're asking me a specific question, and even as I'm asking, I have a notification at the bottom of my screen that says that maybe this is something that you should be talking about. Is technology there yet? Or are we still in that level where we need to have a conversation, then go back and then take a look at the conversation and say, what should we be doing right the next time? Am I making sense out here? Because
Well,
yeah,
actually, even get more timely is not necessarily the next time, what we should be doing this time. And so
yeah,
as I'm talking to
yeah,
someone, what you start off with, right, is a playbook that appears to be the best fit based upon the history for this role, this title.
indeed.
But as the conversation goes along, whatever questions you ask, okay, like whatever product, in our system, you touch the button that says rebuild the playbook. Just hit refresh, and it takes everything that we knew about the prospect when we started the call, that built the initial playbook. It looks at everything that was said during the call, and the rules engine automatically says, well, maybe we should reevaluate, we should talk about these things next. So it rebuilds the playbook even during the call.
So it is possible that
Mm-hmm.
I am talking to Richard right now. Let's say, for example, that I have never talked to Richard before, but the playbook is based on other profiles like Richard in a similar kind of industry. And essentially, I am talking to Richard. So essentially what we're saying is that, is it real time that even as I'm talking, that as things are getting recorded, the AI is getting updated and then saying, wait a minute, this looks like Richard is going to come up with a possible question like this, or we should be prompting the sales rep to be asking certain questions of Richard, and does it show up in the screen, or you know what I mean, even as I'm talking? Wow.
Well, yes. See, so there's a couple ways to do that. Let's use the example that you have a no risk guarantee, and we do, and many companies do. But you basically talk about the no risk guarantee. So that was one of the talking points. And so you clicked on it. Now you talked about it for, let's say, 70 seconds. That means there's a lot of concern about the no risk guarantee. Now the rep may not know that the next best action is to basically understand that this buyer really doesn't believe that you'll give his money back. So the system, when you hit that click, the next click after they talked about the no risk guarantee, and we talked about the contract, the system actually, even without him hitting the button, the AI engine, without him even hitting the button to refresh the screen, could say, wait a minute, we talked about this no risk guarantee for 70 seconds. The normal time should be 30 seconds. So this buyer has a concern. So yes, I can pop an SMS message up on the screen, okay, or I can repaint the playbook, or I can automatically pop up this message. Diva, We really want to earn your business. We want you to be comfortable doing business with us. So instead of our no risk guarantee after 60-day guarantee, why don't we just delay the billing for 60 days? You don't even need to give me a credit card. Let's just begin implementation. And after 60 days, I know you will like it so much you will want to pay for it.
Mm.
Now, you see, there's a very well worded, answer. Now, would a beginning real sales rep be so confident? No.
Right.
But the fact is that gets you, you have indicated by the time we talked about this, that this was an issue for you. I didn't know what to say next, but because I was recording it, I clicked a button, I got an SMS message that says that well-worded answer.
Yeah.
So I came across to the buyer and the objection is gone.
Yeah.
It's gone, okay? We also have a feature that's, once again, patent pending, we call coaching for you, that if you are listening to phone calls, okay, listening to live phone calls, the total worst thing in the world for a sales manager to do is barge in and whisper, barge in.
Yeah.
The second worst thing is to whisper.
Yeah.
Gordon Young rep is trying to do something. And what's the sales rep manager going to say? He's going to say, offer delayed billing. And the guy's he's going to go crazy. And he says, I don't need this, okay? It's hard enough to do this job without you blowing my ear and coming out of nowhere. And so we have this, this really cool patent pending feature that sales manager's listening. He hears the conversation. He clicks a button on his machine. It pops up an SMS message, that message. He doesn't type it in, because if he had to type it in, the event's over. They've gone on to something else, but he's listening. He just touches a button and it pops up on the screen. Why don't you just basically use the product for 60 days? We'll delay the billing. And so now the rep is being helpful. Or during the call here is, this sales rep he's kind of struggling with the lead and he wants the sales manager to help him. He can just click a button and the sales manager gets an SMS message, help me. And they click on that message and it opens up that lead record and they're listening to that call. And so then they can start to coach, because you see, the deal is not to have a great funeral and understand why the patient died. Okay. That we want to have, celebration of life, but wouldn't it be better to have a celebration of closed deals? And so when the sales manager waits until he lost the deal and we do an autopsy, if you had offered that, you probably would have got the deal. How much did that cost you? Right. And once again, the rep goes, this is just too hard. Yeah. And then they turn over. And in today's, another thing we have to be careful of, things are getting so tight in the labor market today, so tight, the economy's booming, that the best reps can go in a New York minute to the next opportunity. Yeah. And so if you make it unpleasant for them, they don't like it. And another thing is, a lot of the reps are younger and they're used to being part of a team. And so like one of the things that they find very attractive is a feature called useful to me, which means I've got all this stuff, these talking points that are saying there, and I'm a rep and I think I know what I'm talking about. And in school, I was respected. My parents always respected me. People value my opinion, maybe disproportionate to my experience. Yeah. But this company here doesn't do that. So here's his first experience of a company that doesn't value his experience or doesn't proceed to. So we've got a little feature called useful to me. He's got a talking point at the end of the call. He just clicks a button on that talking point and he ranks the talking point in its usefulness, its relevance, its completeness. And then he says, you ought to make this more detailed or make this less detailed, or whatever the case may be. So now we have buy-in from the reps, because once again, it has to be useful to them. The system has to be useful to them, and giving them a feedback mechanism makes them feel more important, and they are. Indeed. And it also means marketing and the sales enablement team who are coming up with all these talking points, they get the feedback they so desperately need.
Absolutely. And I think that's what I was thinking as well, because one of the questions I had, which I don't think is a question anymore, it's more a reflection that I'm just going to make right now, is the fact is that I think one of the questions I initially had was, what does this mean to the sales manager? And I think because at the end of the day is that the couple of things I've had being discussed by a bunch of other sales academics is with AI coming up and people actually taking a look at it with more and more peers sharing experiences. What is going to be the job of the sales manager? And I think you kind of alluded to this in the fact that sales managers can become more real time in trying to help their people, and not to mention the fact that going back and taking a look at these playbooks and just making sure that, hey, if sales managers today don't have enough time to coach, this tool is actually going to help them be more relevant, because you don't have to coach every aspect of the call, but you only focus on those things that matter. And essentially what it means is the sales managers are going to become more efficient. The sales managers are going to work with the sales enablement teams if a company is lucky to have a sales enablement team, because I personally believe that there are so many companies out there without a sales enablement team where the sales manager becomes the true enabler in terms of making this happen. And essentially what we're talking right now is either by doing it real time or then going back and analyzing the workbooks and the playbooks and saying, did my salespeople spend enough time talking about specific topics? And you can actually go give meaningful recommendations, suggestions to your sales reps if you're not already doing it real time. And that makes the job of the sales manager more useful, more relevant. And that is what my takeaway from your conversation is in terms of how that sales managers should not also be viewing AI with trepidation that it's going to take away their job, but it's actually is going to make them also become more relevant and kind of interject only when needed, and then working together with the other sales enablement and marketing teams to come up with solutions for new challenges that always will come up when your sales reps are talking to your customers. Am I right in summarizing it this way?
You totally on the mark. And I would add to that when you're a sales manager, you have to be careful who you use as a role model. For example, a really good friend of mine that is a coach, a high school coach. He's a teacher in high school, and he's a really good friend. I see him at least once a week. And he tells me all of his basketball tournaments and whatever the challenges he faces rebuilding his team. Well, I met some of his players. They invited me to go to a game this Saturday. Well, he's got 2 players that are over 7 feet tall. Give me a break, okay? So now if I'm going to try to coach the rest of the high school team and I use these 2 stars, tell me how you do it. Well, it's a little different for a 7-foot person to shoot the basket than a 6-foot person.
Absolutely.
And so when you use just the sales reps as your model, who God gave some special abilities, they're very articulate, they're off-scale smart, they know this space, they've never met a stranger, whatever, that is not replicable, special skill sets. So when you coach, if you're a sales manager, you take the aberrations, if you will, those ones that have very special talents, the height, if you're a basketball player, 7 feet tall, a little different. And you coach the 6-foot player, you use them, like when I went to college, I had a friend who was 6 feet tall, and he played in our college basketball team and did very well because he was a heck of a shooter. Okay, so basically, I want to take the sales reps who are doing well, include the ones that have these incredible normal abilities that the other sales reps will pay no attention to. Yeah. They won't listen to them. So pick other sales reps who are like me, okay, that I can aspire to be like, and use their recorded calls or use the behaviors that they're showing. And maybe you don't even record the phone calls. Like we have a video that says, is your sales call like this? And so you use the sales calls of the successful people in your sales meeting to say that this rep who is their role model, not the one that they can't replicate, that he talked about this for that many minutes and this about that, and he talked about this sequence. He didn't take the notes. He was trying to make money because he got the new car. He knows the more calls he makes, the more money he makes. But in a sales meeting, we use him as a mentor. And of course, he's happy to share his success. And the other people said, I can do that, And so, when I think that, when I always had sales compensation systems with large sales teams, I wanted everybody to be successful.
Indeed.
So yeah, you don't want to have a goal that only a few people win. Now you disproportionately, compensate the super winners, but you have to make everybody in the game. You can't have a guy give up. He's basically looking for another job. And turnover, remember, you can't hire replacement sales reps today in today's economy, and you certainly can't, we reduce the ramp up.
Absolutely.
Motivating people to do their best, and people are motivated to do their best not because you say, if you don't do this, you're fired. That didn't go very far, especially in a tight labor market. But if you say, if you do what Joe's doing over here, Joe's like you. You can do as good as Joe. Yes, I can. I can beat Joe. And that's why, that's why I think that having the tracking what works for Joe, so you can share it with Sally, Sue, and Sam, is what's crucial. Because Sally, Sue, and Sam may not be the superstars naturally gifted, but they can all replicate Joe. And Joe's happy to be replicated. And that's a sales manager's job. Because you see, the biggest problem you have is a sales manager will have more experience, right? And so he's got this younger sales rep, and he goes, man, when you were selling, it was different. So you don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe he doesn't. That's a sad thing. But maybe he does. Mm-hmm. And maybe he uses experience and he has a bigger insight. But if he's not credible, he's wasting his time. So by using the success of the peers, mm-hmm. the peers will modify. I mean, you can talk all day long until you're blue in the face. But if I can go into a sales meeting and say, Let me show you what Sam's doing and what Frank is doing and what Joanna's doing, and you can replicate them. And the guy's, of course I can. Yeah, I'm just as good as Joanna, but what does Joanna do differently? Well, Joanna spends more time discussing this, and Joanna discusses it sooner in the phone call.
Yeah.
And when she closes, she doesn't give the short answer because she's realizing that this question, let's say about the 30-day risk guarantee or 60-day no risk guarantee, is not a question about do you offer it. It is how can I be assured that this is going to be successful? So if you listen to Joanna's calls, you'll see Joanna uses that to transition. May I send you some other customers who've been so wildly successful and let them share with you how quickly they ramped up? Yes. The real question wasn't the no risk guarantee. The question was, can I ramp up? So as a sales manager, I would hear that, if you will, in the amount of time being spent, and the other reps goes, yes. Joanna may not have even realized it. She may have been gifted, and she just picked up on the fact that, the objection is the no risk guarantee. That's what they said, but what they're really saying is, do you think I can get the support from my team to really implement it? So that's what we're all about. That's why we're making the sales manager relevant to his team. He's only relevant when he speaks to recent successes, not what he did years ago. That doesn't matter anymore.
I think that's really fantastic, and I think that's pretty much all the time we have for. But it's such an exciting topic that maybe, Richard, if someday that we should have a conversation just on the sales manager and what this means for the sales manager, because it's tremendous. We talked a lot more about the sales rep and everything else, but I think what this means to the sales organization, what it means to the sales manager could be the topic of another conversation, because now we are talking about an organization structure that has to match what the capabilities of AI and technology are, because your technology can only take you so far. You also need to have the organization to help you manage this, help understand this, design your compensation structures to mimic this, understanding what it means to infrastructures that is needed for this, including maybe creating new functions like sales enablement. And I think that's something that we can have a separate conversation about. But in the interest of time right now, I'm just going to thank you now for the time that you've taken. And I hope that for the audience that stay tuned, this is something that we will continue to discuss on, and how AI is shaping the sales function. But from what we've heard from Richard so far, it's shaping the sales manager's function. It might be shaping how sales organizations need to be looking at sales, AI, and meeting the needs of the customers. So thank you once again, Richard.
Thank you for this opportunity.